Now we can get started on UV unwrapping our model. And so what we're gonna do is delete the left half and just UV one half of it and then mirror it over. So let's just delete it. And we can do our edit duplicate special. Alright, and so now we're gonna go open up our UV editor. And here we can see the UVs that we've created with our new model as we were working on it. So we need to create new ones. So a good step for a complex object like this, a good first step is to do a UV automatic map, just to get us something out there, something we can see, and then we can start picking up individual faces, moving them off to the side and working with them. We'll turn on shaded UVs so that way they're filled. In object mode, right click on your model, choose assign new material. We'll choose a Lambert because we just need a flat shader. And to get to our material, you can scroll in the attribute editor all the way to the right. If we have a lot of history, we'll need to delete that, so that way there'll be less tabs. And then select the new Lambert and rename it checker_matte. And in the color channel, click the checker box to put in a map. Choose checker. In our place 2D texture tab, change the repeat UV to 20 and 20. So that way the texture will repeat. Hit 6 to make the texture show up in the viewport. Now right click on the other half of your model and choose assign existing texture and then choose your checker matte from the list. Alright, nice. So now we'll be able to see how the UVs are gonna space out. So back in our UV editor, the checker map is now the background. We could darken it, or we can just get rid of it completely, because it's not really gonna help us to see it in the UV editor. Alright, so now we'll begin with the leg. We're going to select the faces of the leg. And then we can do a UV automatic map of just those, just to kind of separate them out. And then we can just move them off to the side and work on them individually. So we want our seam to be in the middle of the leg on the inside, where we're not really going to see too much. So we'll select it in the viewport so we know what edge that is, and then we'll select it on the shell, and then shift right click, cut UVs. And now we have our seam there. So we can double click to get the edge, and then we want to deselect our seam, and then we'll keep checking to see where our seam is and selecting that edge from the other side. So we don't want to do the bottom or the top edges, or else we're going to get other UV shells in there. You can go to shell mode to just move the whole island. And any edges we missed, we'll just select them and then shift right click, move and sew. So now I want to add a little bit more geometry along the shoulder. So we'll insert an edge loop. And so that's one of the great things that I really like about Maya, is that I can still add edge loops and kind of tweak them around while still having the UV editor open. And so now let's just space that out. We can Control Shift right click and switch our Move tool to component mode. We'll unwrap the arm the same way we did the leg. So select the faces going around the arm. We can always hit 4 to go to wireframe to make sure we have the faces selected that we want to have. Okay, and now we can do a UV automatic. Move that over to the side. And we're going to place our seam under the arm. So we'll select that edge in our shell so we know where it is. And we'll do our Shift right click cut UVs. And then now we'll select the other sides and do a Shift right click move and sew. And so keep going that until you sew everything together except for along that seam line. We'll right click, go to UV mode, select some of the UVs of the shell, and then you can Control right click and say to shell, and then it'll grab the whole UV shell of the UVs. So Control right click is a way to kind of convert your selection between components. So then we'll Shift right click and choose the Smooth UV tool. And then now if we click and drag the word unfold, it's going to kind of interactively unfold it. And so if you click and drag on relax, it's just kind of weird. So the unfold one is the one we want to mess with. Alright, so now we've got it unfolded. It's looking good. And so I'll rotate this shell just so it makes sense since our arm is sideways. Now we can unwrap the hand. So we'll go ahead and select the faces of the hand. We could unwrap the thumb similar to the way we did the arm. If we had fingers, we would do something like that. But since it's kind of a simple mitten hand, do it a little differently. So we'll select the whole hand, all of the faces. And we'll do a UV automatic just to get something we can work with. So what we're going to do is planar map it, so that way we just have a shell for the top of the hand and a shell for the bottom of the hand. So we can select those faces and then go to UV planar with options. Choose the axis that's running through it to project. So right now the Y axis is running through it. So we'll choose Y. We can use the gizmo in the corner to help us as well. We'll choose Y and then hit apply. And then now it's put this plane along the y-axis and remapped it. So we can close out of the window and move that to the side. And so right now we have both the top and the bottom on top of each other and they're welded together. So what we need to do is select that edge along the middle of the hand So we can double click to select that edge in the UV shell and take a look at the perspective to make sure. And then we will just cut along that edge. So do a shift right click, cut UVs, and then go to shell mode, and now we can see that they're separated out. So we'll just flip it. And now we can just move them closer together. Alright, and now we can start UV unwrapping the torso. And so we're going to do that the same way we did the hand, where I want a front shell for the front of the torso and a back shell for the back of the torso. So we will select the faces of our torso. Alright, looks like we got all of them. So now we can do a UV planer with options. And we'll choose the axis it's running through that. So it's going to be the Z axis. Hit apply and just close it. Alright, so now we can move that over. It has to take up the whole 0 to 1 space when it projects it, so it can be kind of skewed. The two sides are welded together, so what we're going to do is double click along that edge in the viewport, so that way we get the entire edge that's going around it, and then we'll deselect it for the rest of the UV shells. And then now we know for sure that we have all of the edges that are aligned to this model. If we hit 4, we can take a look, and so there's this edge at the bottom that I didn't really see, so that's why it's nice to select the whole edge. So we'll shift right click, cut, and now our UV shells are separate. We can flip that one around. Then we'll go to UV mode, select the UVs, do a shift right click, smooth UV tool, and unfold that. And then we're going to grab the left side of edges because we want that to be a straight line. So we'll grab those, and then we'll hit our align tool just to straighten it out. And then we can take those and do a shift right click, unfold with options, choose that legacy mode, choose horizontal, and then hit apply. And that just will unfold them horizontally and kind of line them up again. So we'll do the same thing to our other side. Select the UVs, smooth UV tool, unfold it. Then we'll grab that side of UVs so we can straighten that out. It'll be easier for us to texture. So we'll hit our align tool, and then we'll grab the remainder of the UVs and unfold those horizontally. So shift right click, unfold with options, horizontal, apply. Nice. Wrap the foot in the same way, so we have a UV shell for the top and the bottom of the foot. And then unfold that. Now we'll UV unwrap the head. We can just select the leftover faces because I think that's all that's left. And then we can do a UV automatic just to get something out there. But let's see, I think what we'll do is a planar map again, just so we have the front side shell of the face and then the back side shell of the face. So we'll do a planar map with options. And now we just need to select that edge and cut them along that side. So we can deselect the edge that we selected for the other shells, so we're only cutting along this one, the head UV. We'll shift right click, cut UVs, and it looks like we accidentally got the ear in there. I forgot about that. So we'll just move that over to the side and unwrap that next. Now we'll unfold these similar to the way we did the torso, where we'll do our smooth UV tool, align one of the sides to be straight, and then unfold it horizontally. Now for the ear. We'll right click and choose shell or face to select the ear. And then, since it's a more complex shape, we can do a UV automatic map. So we'll go to UV, automatic, and that should be good enough. So we can right click, choose edge mode, and then select that outer edge of the front ear. If we don't know which one of these is the front, you can just go to face mode and select it in the viewport. So we'll double click to select the edge around that shell, and then we can do our shift right click, move and sew. Now that leaves us with these gaps, these areas where there's going to be some seams, and some of them don't matter. Some of them is going to cause our texture to stretch. So I think the outer part of the ear will sew together, and we can leave the other parts alone. So now we'll right click, go to UV mode, select all of those UVs, and do a shift right click, smooth UV tool. Now this back part of the ear looks like it's not really seen on our 3D model. So if that's the case, if we're never going to see it, we could just delete it. So it depends on if you're planning to do anything with it, but generally if you're never going to see any faces, they don't need to exist. So we'll just hit delete, and there we go. Alright, now that we have all of the shells unfolded and laid out, we can start assembling them into the 0 to 1 space. So if we go to polygons layout with options, so the square button, And we go to Edit Reset Settings just to make sure they're reset. So in this pre-scale option, if we have that set to none, it's going to take all of our shells and put them in the 0 to 1 space, that top right quadrant. But if we set our prescale to none, it's not going to make the resolution per shells equal. And so if we switch that to object, then it'll make the checkerboards even on all the different shells. Everybody's getting the same amount of resolution, and world will also get us that same effect. So now all of our shells are laid out in the 0 to 1 space. They're all getting the same amount of texture resolution. So now we can right click, go to shell mode, and start adjusting them. So first we'll select all of them and scale them down uniformly, so that way we have a little bit more room to work with. The way that Maya automatically laid them out may not necessarily make sense to us as a texture artist. So we come in and we grab those shells and we just try to position them in ways that are going to be easy for us to texture. So for instance, the leg, I'll try to make it straight up and down because that's the way a leg is. My hands, I can make them match the same orientation, so that way I can, easily copy and paste details, elements that are associated with each other, like the bottom of the foot and the top of the foot, I'll put together. And we can use those areas where there's a straight line edge to line those up with the border of the 0 to 1 space, or to line those up with other objects with a sharp border. What we want to do is just make sure our UV shells are in that top right quadrant, the 0 to 1 space. We want to make sure they have some space in between them. There's no shells overlapping that shouldn't overlap. And if you are going to do any scaling, making your shells bigger or smaller, you'll want to do it to all of them, so that way we can make sure that they're getting the same amount of resolution on the texture. Now it does depend on what you're trying to create. Some people will give certain parts more resolution than other parts. For instance, if the bottom of the foot is really never going to be important at all, it's just going to be like a flat black color, then that could get scaled down. And then if the face was really, really important, then that could even get its own texture sheet to get that full resolution. But for this exercise, we're just going to make them all the same size. So here we have a version where there's some space, so that way any of our accessories, any clothes, anything like that, we can just put over there to the right. And here's an example of a UV layout where I'm just maximizing taking up the whole 0 to 1 space, since my model is just the base. Okay, so now that we've unwrapped all of the shells, we can delete our duplicate and mirror it over, so that way we have a complete welded model. So we'll delete it, select our half we want to keep, shift right click, mirror polygon, and choose the -X. So now you can see we have these purple shells, and that's just because we have the blue shell on top of the red shell. And so it's red just because it's mirrored over. It's inverted. But that's fine. It's just to let us know that the face is flipped. When we mirror, that middle edge becomes a hard edge. When we mirror, that middle edge becomes a hard edge. So we just want to go to edge mode. We can double click to select that whole edge loop, and then go to our mesh display, soften edge. We can give our model a look over. Looks good. Now, if we wanted to weld some of these shells together, for instance, if we were going to do some sort of asymmetrical design on the face, then we could just take the shell, flip it, and then weld them together. And then we could use our unwrap tool, our smooth UV tool, to unwrap them a little bit. And if there's still any sort of pulling, anything we want to fix up, we can just go directly to our UV mode and just move those UVs around. The same goes for the torso. If we were going to do some asymmetrical texturing on the torso, then you could just flip one of the shells. Now I'm noticing that the front of my face looks like the UVs are a little at a strange angle, so I'm just going to go to UV mode and use my move tool to straighten them up. Once we're finished with laying out our whole UV shells, then we want to save out an image of our UV shells to use as a guide. So we'll go to polygons. All the way at the bottom, UV snapshot. That will open up a window. And so we can hit the browse button, and it's automatically going to save in our images folder if our project is set. And we can just call this whatever it is, so character underscore UV. And then the size, we want to set that to the size that we want our texture to be. So 1024 will work for this, 512. And then for image format, we'll change that to JPEG. Click OK. And then now at the bottom we can see it saved that out. So if we go to our project files, in the images folder, we now have a JPEG of our UVs. And so we can take that into Photoshop and use that as a guide. Now I'm going to speed up this part. I decided to start modeling some clothes onto this character. And so I'm doing something pretty simple. I'm just going to add some shorts and like a little jacket and shirts and a boot. So basically just using my insert edge loop tool, my multi-cut tool, to give me some more resolution, and then I'm coming in with my move, my scale, and my rotate, and doing stuff with the new resolution that I have. I'm just going to do it on half of the model, and then I'll just delete the other half and mirror it over. And then to kind of add in some details without changing the geometry, we can select our edges and do a mesh display harden edge or soften edge to give us a different kind of look.